Hi everybody, this is Raw with a quick how-to video. This is a video for a friend of mine, Fado Morelli. I met him on screen the other day, and he wants to get to the moon, and I offered to make him a how-to video on how to get there. This includes both flight planning and vehicle design. So, I'm going to make a very easy-to-fly rocket to the moon, and I'm going to go step by step on how to do it. So first, we're going to use the lightest weight lander can we can, which is this one. We're not going to use RCS, so we can take off the monopropellant and save that mass. We need to build the vehicle back to front. So we need to build first what's going to come back from the moon to Kerbal. But what I mean from back to front is there's several stages of the flight. Stage 1 is from Kerbal to the atmosphere. To orbit. Stage 2 is from the orbit of Kerbal to the orbit of the moon. Stage 3 is to land on the moon. And stage 4 is to come from the moon back to Kerbal. So this is our stage 4 craft. It's just what's going to come back to Kerbal. It's going to have the smallest of engines and pretty much the smallest of tanks, and that should be more than enough to get us back to Kerbal. Then we're going to put a couple of solar panels on it. These are the easiest ones to use because you don't need to open them. They're just there. They don't burn up. They don't break. They're great. I'm going to put symmetry, so there's 2, 1 on each side. The other thing that we're going to need is the parachute to come back. We're not going to use the drogue because that's kind of like the high atmosphere braking one. You'll slam it to the ground and die if you use that one. This one will, however, stop us. Great. So that's our stage 4 craft. Alright, so now stage 3. Stage 3 is we're around the moon and we're going to land, right? So, of course, every stage of the craft requires a different decoupler. I'm going to decouple that there. My stage 3 lander is going to have this big old tank, but it doesn't need a very big engine. The moon has very low gravity, so we can just use that one. Of course, we're going to need landing legs. I like these, even though they're heavy. I'm going to put 3, which is the minimum, and that's good. Now this, as you can see, is a little flimsy, so that's where we go to the structure and put on the struts. I'm going to put on 4, and there we go. That's our stage 3 craft. That's our third stage. That's what's going to land on the moon. The second stage is, of course, from Kerbal orbit to lunar orbit. That's going to require quite a bit of fuel, quite a bit of power. So again, I'm going to put on the big decoupler. Again, I'm going to strut it. This time I'm going to use 6 to make sure this doesn't break, because there's going to be a lot of hump from here up. That didn't work. Let's try that again. Okay, let's try it backwards. There we go. Okay, so our second stage is going to be what's going to actually get us to the moon. I'm going to put on the biggest gray tank and the poodle engine. And since this is already starting to get heavy and power hungry, I'm going to put a control wheel on it. Now, this is where the iffy techniques start coming into place. I'm going to kind of go straight up with this. I'm going to put 3 control wheels. In order to just slap them onto the side of this, I'm going to, here in the structural part, go to this, the radial attachment point. This is just basically a way to staple things on other things where there isn't an attachment point. So I'm going to put that there, and that's going to let me put my wheels. Boom. That helps us steer in space. This is also going to be a little power hungry, so despite there already being some panels on there, I'm going to put another couple of panels. Now, I see everybody using these white ones because they're covered, but they're heavier because they're covered. These are the exact same panels, but without the covering, so they're lighter. I'm going to use the 3x6. I'm going to put 3 of them here. These we do have to open and close them, but they're very light. That's our second stage. That's going to be jettisoned after it gets us to lunar orbit. Now, the next stage isn't one stage. It's probably going to be 2. And this you did really well when I was watching your stream last time, Fate. This is what's going to get this entire contraption into space. So I'm going to use 1 orange tank, 1 gray tank, 1 mainsail engine. I'm going to put 4 struts from one tank to the other just to make sure it doesn't fall apart. And then I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to hold down Alt and click on the tank. When I do that, it's going to copy everything from here down. Boom. I'm going to put in my decoupler. I'm going to put this in 3 times symmetry. Staple that onto that. And now we have a very similar rocket to the one you had that one day. Now I'm going to strut this. 1 strut on each side on the bottom. Work, darn it. And 1 single strut on the top. I really wish this would work more often. There we go. And that should hold it together. And I'm going to lower it a little bit so it's not so high, so I can put in the gantries. That's pretty good. I'm going to put some gantries on the outside. Not in the middle, of course. Sort of to around the outside. And then to control it in the atmosphere, I'm going to put in these fins right in the middle. Now staging. Okay, so again we're going to go from top down. So the parachute's going to be by far and wide the last thing we're going to run. I'm going to click plus to make its own stage, put it in there. Then the next stage is of course the engine that fires, and this thing that separates us from the lander. This can be one stage, because that engine fires and separates us as this thing lets us go. So I combine those. That's fine. So once I'm on the moon, I fire this. This engine gets me back home. This thing puts me back. I pop it when I'm in the atmosphere. Then, alright, this engine is our moon lander. This one should fire at the same time as just the couples, so we can combine those. So once I'm already around moon orbit and I'm ready to get rid of that, this decouples this and fires that engine. Great. Alright, now this decoupler and this engine can be together as well, because that's when we're already in orbit and we're going to start burning to the moon. Then this engine can fire at the same time as these run out of juice and are dropped, so I can stage this and this together. And this is very important to almost always do. With a rocket that has so much power, let the first engines and the letting go thing be at the same stage. So that way you can power up and just hit it and go to the moon. So let's dedicate this thing. We're going to christen it for Fate. The only other thing I want to do, just for thoroughness sake, is I'm going to create an action group for the solar panels, so I don't have to find them. It's going to be custom number 1, and that's going to be the toggle the panels. That means that whenever I hit the 1 on the keyboard, it's going to toggle the panels on and off. And that is a basic rocket that should be able to make it to the moon. Let's launch it. Okay. Throttle up to 100%. SAS on, stage, and see it takes straight up. Let's go, and fires the engine, and off it goes. Like I said, this is a tutorial sort of for somebody that's fairly new to Kerbal Space Program, so I'm going to go in detail through everything. We're going to keep it burning at full throttle all the way up to 10 kilometers. Since we're using the trick of the gray tank under the orange tank, our engine should never overheat, and this thing has more than enough power to keep us going up through the atmosphere. We're just going to go full burn. The combination of the control wheels and the fins keep it just rock solid under control. This thing's not going to go anywhere I don't want it to go. As I get close to 10 kilometers, I'm going to prepare to do my turn. 10 kilometers, turned in a 90-degree mark. It's spinning a little bit, but it's nothing we can't handle. Wish we were doing this in the daytime. Our speed's coming up nicely. It's about to run out of juice. Alright, stage. See, separated and fired the engine at the same time. This will be more than enough to get us into orbit. Just keep burning. Go over to the map. Okay, so our apoapsis is rising. Now, what I want to do is not keep it at such a high angle so that it keeps going up and up and up. By burning every time flatter and flatter and flatter, the arc is going to go around more and not high. We don't want it to go too high. So it's already in the 70 kilometers. That's high enough. I'm going to start burning down as close to flat as possible to keep the apoapsis at the same place, but to bring that orbit around the planet behind me. So I'm burning almost perfectly flat, picking up tons of speed, and we can't avoid it. We're going to pick up altitude, but that's fine. So now that it's going past 90, I'm actually going to aim down a little bit to keep picking up speed, but stop picking up so much altitude. So now we're going fairly fast and fairly high. As soon as I hit the 100-kilometer mark, I'm going to shut down the engine. There we go. Now since we're still in the atmosphere, it's going to slow us down a little bit at a time. But you see we're not really losing that much altitude. There's no reason for me to burn here because it just gives me more altitude. I don't want altitude, I want velocity. So I'm going to time accelerate all the way up to the top here, and this is where we're going to do our first node. I remember we're having a bit of difficulty with nodes, so let me explain this real easy. When we create a maneuver node, the icons represent in which direction we're going to increase our movement. This hollow one means forward, this one means backward, these two mean up and down, this means left and right. Here we're going to want to go forward to increase our velocity and circularize our orbit. So we're going to grab this one and pull it, and you see it's going to just extend the orbit from where it is without actually increasing our altitude total. It's just going to bring the other side of our orbit to the same altitude we have now. When the orange things are at 90 degrees each from the blue one, like this, see, like a triangle, that means that it's circular. There's 102, a little over 100 kilometers on each side. Now we go down here. It says 6-second burn. So if we aim at this blue thing and burn for 6 seconds in 1 minute, we will circularize our orbit just as this maneuver node states. This is where those reaction wheels are coming in really handy, because without me having to fire the engine at all, I am moving. Now I am running out of power, so I don't want to do this too much, and I'm going to hit 1 and extend the panels before the power runs out. See, there go the panels. You can see them barely in the dark. Okay, now that I have it aiming where I want it to aim, I'm going to time accelerate. Okay, and 3 seconds short of the burn, because I wanted it to be 3 before and 3 afterwards, I start my engines. 4, 3, 2, 1, and the node is out. Also, this is fairly spent. There's just a little bit of fuel left in there, and I don't really need it, so I can just jettison it. And now, this ship is in orbit around Kerbal. 100-kilometer orbit. That's great. And it just has what it needs to get to the moon and back. None of that extra stuff that we use to get into the atmosphere. Now I find the moon. Left click on it, set target, and we need to make an intercept node. Now the moon's, the trip to the moon, which is a couple of days, happens in the same amount of time as the moon moves forward about 45 degrees on its 360 orbit. So the moon's there, it's spinning counterclockwise, so spinning in this direction. I want to hit it around here. That's 45 degrees up from where it is right now. So I'm going to aim at it with my planet. I'm going to create a maneuver node on the opposite side of the direction I want to go, which is here. And I want to accelerate. Accelerating on the opposite side of Kerbal gets us going in that direction. So I'm going to pull my maneuver node forward. And that's going to get me going at the most efficient path towards the moon, which is right where the moon is going to be by the time I get out there. So I keep pulling it, and you'll see how it changes when we get the encounter. Now when you get these little arrows, which we're about to get, that's really good news. What this is saying is this is signifying a near encounter, not really an encounter. This is where the moon is going to be if I do this burn, and this is where I'm going to be closest. If I just burn like this, that means that I'm going to be that close to the moon and then come back. So if I keep going, you see those points get closer and closer, and eventually they'll meet. Now I think I'm not quite 45 degrees, so I can go by those arrows. See, the arrow says that when I intercept the moon's orbit, I'll be there, but the moon will already be way past, which means I'm not aiming left enough. So in order to move the entire node, I'll click on the circle in the middle, make sure I don't click on any of these direction icons, but the circle in the middle, and just drag it across my orbit to the encounter, and boom, that's saying we have a moon encounter. Moon encounter means when we enter the sphere of influence of the moon. That's what these confusing little circles are. This icon here, the orange one, that's when we switch from orbiting Kerbal to orbiting the moon. And this purple one is when we leave the orbit of the moon and go back into the orbit of Kerbal. We're going to have to do a braking maneuver somewhere in there to stay around the moon. Now you'll also see that there's another apoapsis over there. Okay, so here we go. This one's even better. This is saying that we're going to crash into the moon, because you see we change influence, sphere of influence, and then it takes us right there. I'll do that burn because that means that I can adjust it so that we're really close to the moon. So let's see, that's a 25-second burn in 28 minutes. Now we staged and it didn't get to register how powerful this poodle is, so I don't trust it. In order for it to recalculate the time better, I'm going to aim right at this, and I'm going to throttle up a little bit, and then turn it off. Okay, so here we calculated the time of the burn. It's actually a minute and a half. Or sorry, a minute and 50 seconds. Half of a minute and 50 seconds, well, half of a minute is 30. Half of 50 is 25. 30 and 25 is 55. So I want to start burning 55 seconds before the node, and 55 seconds after, so that it gets there exactly. That's what it's called, the 50-50 burn. So I'm going to time accelerate around. I keep an eye on the clock, and I want to do this full burn when this says 55 seconds to go. Okay. 12 minutes to go. I got our batteries full because of the, solar panels. 7 minutes to go. Okay, I don't want to time accelerate way past our node. Okay, that's exactly what I didn't want to do. So I turn on the engine and I do the burn. This is going to get us our moon intercept. I'll go back to the map and check it out. See, we're burning on the opposite side of Kerbal, accelerating ourselves in that direction, and that's going to increase our orbit on the other side. It doesn't do anything for our orbit on this side. It does it for the opposite side, and it's going to extend it all the way to our lunar intercept. We can time accelerate this, so it's not so boring. 4 times time acceleration. And away we go. Let's take out the time acceleration so that I can fine-tune my burn. And counter. Okay, I don't need the node anymore, so I can click on it and delete it. Now I want to, as soon as possible, tweak my approach to the moon. So first of all, when I enter the sphere of influence of the moon here, I'm going to be flying towards the moon till I hit the moon periapsis, and then I'll be flying away. If I don't brake, by the time I get out here, I'll have escaped the moon's gravity. From way back here when we're still by Kerbal, we can aim this. I can speed this up myself up or slow this down to make my approach closer or further. This is a lot of trial and error, but I'm going to just burn a little bit towards it. Oops, see, getting closer, that's great. I want to keep burning till I'm almost on the surface of the moon. That's a collision course. When the periapsis goes away, that means you're going to crash on the moon. I can see that from now. I don't want to crash on the moon, I want to fly right by the moon. So I'm going to brake myself a little bit. That's 200 meters, that's way too close. 4,000, that's still too close. 8. Let's say 20 is good. Alright. So what we just did here is we made a deorbit burn, or I'm sorry, lunar insertion burn from Kerbal to the moon that's going to put us within 20 kilometers of the surface of the moon, where we can then brake and do our orbit. So we're going to time accelerate. We don't want to do over 1,000, or we might fly by and then end up in heliocentric orbit, like I've seen sometimes happen. And as we get closer to the encounter, when we switch to the lunar orbit, I'm going to cut it down to 100. I want all the time possible to do my lunar maneuvers. Okay, so now when that all switches, we're no longer technically in Kerbal's orbit. No, we're in lunar orbit. But if we don't stabilize it, we're going to glance by the moon and fly off to nowhere. So now I'm going to create a maneuver node here at the 22 kilometer apart. I'm going to pull the retrograde, which means that I'm slowing down. I'm burning to brake till I'm no longer escaping the moon, according to this. Now I've captured the moon. And I can keep pulling this so that it circularizes much like we did around Kerbal. Again, we're going to wait for the yellow triangles to be at 90 degrees from the blue triangles, signifying that we have a circular orbit. And there we go. That's 21 kilometers on one side, 23 kilometers on the other. It's circular enough. That's going to be a 4-minute burn in an hour and 30 minutes. I'm going to line it up beforehand. As you see, this rocket steers really nice because of the control wheels. I can just basically move it whatever I want. And I'm going to time accelerate while looking at the moon, because it's cool to look at the moon as you're coming in. Okay, there's our 1,000 times warp. We're slowing down in case it lags out a little bit. I'm doing 10 times warp because I'm nervous about this. Okay, here comes 50. Okay, so here it's 4. So it's a 4-minute burn. We want to go 2 minutes before and 2 minutes after. So I'm going to keep time accelerating a little bit till we're close to the 2-minute mark. There we go. Okay. 10 seconds. And full burn. I start a little bit early because it takes the engine a little while to spin up. And we're starting our deceleration burn. If we look at the map, you see it's circularizing ourselves around the moon quite well. What do you mean 2 minutes? It's more like 20 seconds. Now, these nodes are crazy sometimes. The heck with it. We'll just roll with it. Okay. Since our burn was totally off, we're going to see, okay, that's 16 kilometers. I'm going to, actually, no, that's not bad. I'll just redo it at 16 now that this thing understands better how the engine works. Okay. 16, 17, that's fine. 6-second burn in another 4 minutes. I'll do this from here. There's no reason to go back to, okay, we're accelerating. We're going to go to 3 seconds, so we can do 50-50. At 4 seconds ago, okay. And boom, okay, so we have it. 16 on one side, 17 on the other side. That's a pretty good burn, okay. So you want to hang out on the moon and check out, you know, all the stuff that's here, whatever, fly over it, take pictures, that's great. But let's set up to land. Now I'm going to use this thing to stop us and put us on a collision course with the ground, then jettison it, and use these engines and tank just for the landing part. So I'm going to go retrograde to slow us down and make us land. I'm going to burn till the periapsis is on the ground somewhere around here, because I want to land here on the light side in the nice little flat part. Okay, let's say we're going to land there. That's fine. Okay, since we have so much fuel, I'm going to use this. I'm going to let it coast down. You know what? We're going to land around here somewhere. Okay, so I'm going to point a little up and to the retrograde so that we're slowing down, so that we're no longer moving around the surface. But we also don't want to stop and drop like a rock, so I'm going to point it up a little bit. The only thing that's keeping us in the air is our sideways velocity. If we just kill the sideways velocity, we just fall out of the sky onto the moon. So I'm not going to aim straight flat. I'm going to kind of do it like this. We're going to move up a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to do massive braking and hopefully land somewhere around here. Using up all the fuel in this tank that we're about to jettison anyway. There we go. We're starting to drop. Alright. Okay. So I'm gonna try to get my prograde vector, you see it there, where I'm going, to be straight up and down. That means I'm going straight down to the surface. I can jet that now, lower my landing gear, and use this engine. Lower my landing gear, I said. G. And I'm going to use this engine and this tank to keep a controlled descent. By controlled, I mean under 40 meters per second straight down. And increase my throttle slowly so that I'm braking. We're actually pretty close. You can see my shadow there. The tank is about to crash and blow up. That's fine. I don't care. And I'm going to try to keep this at a steady burn. So that I'm moving down at, 5 or 6 meters per second. I really don't want to let this thing get out of control. There's fancy stuff you can do that are very fuel efficient to land, but it's dangerous too, so I don't want you to do that. Just, get it on a little control. Burn. Slightly slowing down as you get close. That's good. We're dropping at a steady pace. We're almost on the moon. I want to land softly, of course. And as soon as I touch down, cut the engine. There it is. If you do everything I showed you like this, you will be the first German on the moon. Yay! Okay. You can get out. Hit the R key to put on your jetpack and fly around the moon. Say some meaningful stuff like that's a small step for Kerbal, a giant leap for video game kind. And do a little dance. You can plant the flag. And then go home. Okay, so I'm not going to put anything. Okay, jump, turn the jetpack back on, get back in the little capsule. You hit shift to fly up and the arrow keys, the regular WSAD keys to move. F to board again. But since I didn't put a ladder on this, it's harder than I expected it to be. But it'll be fine. There we go. Alright. Now, we didn't hardly use any fuel landing, so we can take advantage of this to get into lunar orbit again. Just going to throttle up, point myself to the 90-degree vector, because we want to orbit around the same way that we orbit around Kerbin. Going to go almost perfectly flat, and pick up tons of speed. Launching off the moon is not like launching off Kerbin that has an atmosphere that you want to get up out of before you start going around. With this one, you can just start going around immediately. And you see here how our apoapsis is rising, our velocity is rising, that's fine. I'm going to aim up because I want the apoapsis to stay ahead of me. That's me, that's my apoapsis. If I'm not ahead of it, that means I'm dropping. It should be taking off pretty good. The highest mountains on the moon are at about 8 kilometers. So as long as your orbit is above, let's say 9,000 meters, just to be on the safe side, you're usually pretty good. So I'll stop the burn at 10. Since there's no atmosphere to slow me down, it doesn't move, it's just there. I'll time accelerate out there. Well, I'm creating a maneuver node first. It's going to be our circularized orbit of the moon before heading back to Kerbin. There, it's 10 there, 10 there. Okay, great. Point at this. 3-second burn in 3 minutes. Alright, so let's accelerate out those 3 minutes. Okay, almost to the 3-second mark. I'm just gonna go a little early and just burn the engine slowly. It's because when it's a 3-second burn and whatnot, it's so easy to screw it up. And there it is. Delete. 10, 10, perfect, okay. Now to Kerbin. Alright. So here's the deal. We want to elongate our orbit around the moon in such a way that it puts us back onto Kerbin directly. It's a mistake to get a big, huge moon-like orbit around Kerbin and then have to slow down to get caught by Kerbin. You can do it from here. The way you do it is, you see the line here on the moon as it's going around? That's the front of the moon and its orbit. We're going to go a little ahead of that, like 45 degrees ahead of that, and create a maneuver node. This means that we're going to fly around Kerbin and then accelerate ourselves out that way so that this burn is slowing ourselves from the Kerbin orbit and bringing us back. You'll see what I mean when I start pulling it. Now, I'm going to go to the prograde, that's the forward one, and I'm going to accelerate. Our orbit around the moon is going to extend so that we're shooting past the back of the moon against the moon's orbit. As you see, once we escape, our periapsis around Kerbin is dropping because we're actually braking by doing this burn. The more I pull it, the lower it gets. 1.4 million. Only 35. Now we don't want to put this on the ground in Kerbin. We want to put this in the atmosphere in Kerbin so that it brakes us gently. In order to get captured at this velocity, we need to be under 20. So that 17 kilometer Kerbin periapsis is a perfect re-entry. We'll get there fine. So that's the 30-second burn in 13 minutes. I'm going to find that node. Here it is. This one's a little more sluggish because we lost the wheels. We crashed them on the Kerbin. So we have no control wheels. And we're orbiting the moon gracefully. Let's time accelerate. I'm going to burn 15 seconds before and 15 seconds afterwards, as we have been with our 50-50 burns. And 1 minute. Okay. Okay. Here we go. And we start our burn. Look it on the map. We're about to escape the moon. And there we go. Out. And now we're see Kerbal orbit dropping, 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 dropping. I'm actually going to do this last part by ear. I'm just going to keep pointing at the prograde and burning ever so slightly and watching that drop. I'm going to get it just below 20 and we'll be fine. There's 100 and 20. There we go, 16. That's it. That's perfect. We're back. No matter what we do right now, we can't really screw up anymore. I mean, even if we... Well, for example, I'm going to jettison that thing. I don't need it anymore. I'm going to just time accelerate until we get back to Kerbal. That lander engine, don't need it anymore. We still have this in case we need to want to do anything interesting back in Kerbal. But we're actually already home free. We really don't need anything else. Okay, we're going to do the 1,000 times time acceleration and watch Kerbal creep up on us. Okay. There we go. It's okay to time accelerate like the 50 or something here because it will actually slow us down when we hit the atmosphere. There it goes. So we want to point away so that the engine takes... Well, still accelerating. So that the engine is facing forward in case we want to brake or whatever. But we won't really need to. The atmosphere will take over. We can do physics warped 4 times. There we go. Doing our re-entry. It's the exciting part. The fact that we're glancing isn't getting us very high G-force. If you see, it's creeping up there because we're moving really fast. We came through at, you know, like, what, 13,000 miles an hour, but the atmosphere is helping us burn that velocity down quick. We're not even getting into the red G-forces. Now, this doesn't mean anything yet, but in future versions of the game, I think if you don't have a heat shield, and if you exceed your Gs as you're coming in, you come in too steep, you might burn up or blow up or something. We're already losing Gs. We're already so decelerated it doesn't even care anymore. I wish this would have happened in the daytime because we can't really see what's going to happen, but we're already below 15 kilometers. We're still moving straight down and we're already decelerating. Once the fire goes away, I can pop the parachute and let it glide down. Now, when accelerating with the parachute, you got to be careful because these chutes open more at like 700 meters, and if you time accelerate through that, you can sometimes rip them off and get yourself killed. So I'm going to time accelerate all the way down past to about a kilometer, and there I'm going to slow down to regular time acceleration, regular speed. And you see there, boom. Okay, that would have killed me if I was at full time acceleration. It usually does. Now that it's open again, we can accelerate and bring it all the way down. That's what I'm talking about. I'm so good at this. That entire return stage engine was totally unnecessary. We didn't even fire that. But it's good to have that just in case mistakes are made, if you know what I mean. And there we go. Jeb is now a hero and whatnot, and we can recover the ship. So, that's my 40-minute tutorial on building a rocket to go to the moon and back, and how to do it. This one goes out to my bud, Fate of Morality. Keep the stream going, dude. You're awesome. Hope you enjoy the video.